Are we good? Okay, we'll bring the meeting to order today. All the council members are present. Okay, you got all that, so we're good with that. Okay, first item of business is Public Works Center project update, right?
Yes, thanks, Dan. I'll be delivering this for you this evening. John is on vacation, but same format as last time. We just provided you some notes there so you can get a snapshot of where we're at. The general status is basically, as you can see here, we've got 4 different buildings that are currently under various stages of construction. Building D is the one that has not been started yet. That is our material storage building. We're still working on getting some final design details reviewed and approved before that can get started. Looking at the pictures that you have this week, just an assortment of various different shots. So you've got the first one there is just an overhead view of the entire campus, as it were, with building A in the bottom corner here and B immediately behind it, which would be our mechanic shop. E back up at the front of the site. This is 96th. And then this is the footings for F. Then D will be back here in this corner, right? And of course, our peaking storage tank background. And then just some close-ups of a few more close-ups of the various buildings. You got building A and the interior. I did want to point out that the AV conversation that we'll have at Council Workshop on November 2nd, the room that's going to be going in is this room right here. This is half of the room anyways. There's about another 30 feet of room behind where the perspective this picture was taken from.
There's lights on here at night. Does it have power there now? Is that temporary?
There is. They do have power hooked up now, as well as gas is going in as well. Conduits for phone and cable. You can see a couple pictures of the various first and second floor elevator shaft and so on. So just something for your use to review and
Thank you.
Take a look at. This picture here is interesting because basically you're looking through what'll be the main entrance to the yard here. This is between buildings A and E. And so there will be a double swing gate there. It's 30-foot access, so 2 15-foot drive lanes. And I was just out there for a couple hours today. We were going over our access control program for the gates and how that's going to be set up and where the card readers will be at for after hours access to the yard and all that kind of stuff.
Like police then kind of set up?
Similar. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be able to program when the gates can stay open and closed and all kinds of stuff. And then the last picture is just an overhead view of the storm pond on the site that they recently cleared out. Moving forward, we're up to 244 RFIs, requests for information from the contractor. We've got a total of 46 change orders at an approved change order cost to date of $792,000. Similar as we discussed last time, we have a total, including design contingency, of $962,000 available to handle design contingency and change orders. We are expecting some additional change orders still to come. There's some corrections that needed to be made to building D, and we expect to see those roll through. And as John put down here last time, we're currently right now estimating that we'll probably be around $300K more than the contingency item we currently have. So we'll keep watching that obviously very carefully. Working days, we're now 93% complete on the actual working days, which is obviously longer than we wanted the project to go on, but we do now have a revised construction schedule, which I won't bore you with. It's 7 pages of really small text and lines all over the place. But if you would like to dive in, I brought a copy here that you can certainly look at. The punchline to that is that we now have a final completion date of February 8th, 2022. So day before my 49th birthday, and I told the contractor I would love to have a birthday present, which would be
awesome.
Which would be the keys to the building. So we'll keep leaning on them. Just a couple other notes. Of course, you can see under the consultant contracts, this is an updated total of what remains on each of those contracts. And as you would expect, because the project is going long, we're going to need to have amendments come forward for their consultant contracts to continue to provide the support that we need to get through to the end of the job. So we are working with them on that to find out what those are, how much they'll be, and then of course we'll be bringing those back through here for your review as well. And then finally, just some anecdotal information. The other day, an email went out to the entire contractor and their subcontractor team. So I thought I'd just list the names of all the different subcontractors we currently have on this project. There's 41 of them. It is makes for a lot of moving pieces.
So our list.
Yeah, a lot of moving pieces. If anybody has any questions, if there's anything you'd like me to hit on more, I'm happy to do that. As I said, the AV discussion will be on the agenda for the November 2nd council workshop. I was able to put together some additional information for you, and you'll see a memo and some backup information in the packet that gets put together for.
So are you in contact with all these subcontractors to be sure they're on schedule with us too? Are they?
So our team, these are brought on directly by the contractor.
Okay.
So the contractor monitors their progress and make sure that they're on top of things. One of the things obviously we didn't count on is that all these contractors require materials. Many of those materials are either stuck in a port somewhere or
That was my concern.
otherwise not on the site. And so that is something we continue to contend with also as far as timeline is concerned. We have some significant weights on some of the materials we need.
With all the furniture and stuff, is that being held?
Furniture, we're in good shape. They're ready to roll as soon as we can tell them that we've got a go-ahead date for them to move in. It's more things like the coiling doors, surface coatings, some of the electrical stuff. They're not actually on here because they're contracting directly with the city, but I managed to, working with PSE, secure 4 of our EV chargers for free. However, there was a significant delay on those, and we had to change manufacturers 2 or 3 times because of supply chain disruptions. So looks like right now we'll probably be putting those in sometime in the latter half of November or early. That's what I prepared for you for this week. Like I said, if there's any questions, happy to take those now.
How is it that we're 72%?
And 93% of the construction days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just as a result of being behind schedule. We haven't billed out as much work as we've gone through on the construction days. So what I would expect to see is that some of these change orders have additional working days with them. And so as we approve those, that adds to the working days of the contract. So you'd see that percentage complete drop as those additional days are added. But as of right now, at the end of September, that's where we were at.
No, like it is. Very good.
Yeah, this job has been something else to be sure. I've jokingly told people that I think for this project that has the history that it does, nearly 20 years of going through this in one form or another, it just seems to just fit that it would also be the one constructed during a pandemic, and that we would have supply chain disruptions and everything else. But we are coping with it and doing the best we can.
Thank you.
Which foundation for the building A?
So the only one that has not had any concrete work done at all is building D, which is our material storage, and that's behind. Let me get my picture out here again.
This building here. Do on this building and.
That's building E, and so we just finished pouring the walls for that building that are around the outside edge, and then we are going to come back and we'll pour a foundation slab, a slab for the interior of the building. Yeah, and then the next building over F, you can of course see the plinths and the supporting concrete for the pre-engineered steel building that'll go on top of that. Then that will eventually just be paved over with, actually, no, they'll come back and they'll be pouring a slab on top of that, and then there'll be a slab for D as well.
Do we think we're going to slab for?
For E, I'd need to check with the contractor. They just did the walls, But I would expect that as long as we can get product, we should be pouring that within the next couple weeks. I could look at the schedule here really quick and probably tell you somewhere in here. The It looks like right now we're looking at, they actually have it for the last week of October at this point. And if there's ever a time where you would like to come out to the site, please let me know. I'm happy to set up that time. And, you know, with a little bit of heads up to the contractor, it's never a problem to bring people out and have a walk around. So
Good idea.
building A is the nearest to completion at this point. As a matter of fact, when I was in it today, they actually had paint on the walls. So that was kind of fun to see. Still a little ways to go.
Thank you.
these meetings eventually be there.
So that's one of the things we've been talking about a little bit, and I think is part of that AV discussion,
Well,
correct?
most likely not, because you're immediately followed by council six,
Yeah.
and there wouldn't be time to transit back and forth.
That'd be tragic.
One of the things we have talked about is design commission,
Yeah.
the hearing examiner, those types of meetings, having those out there. And then we'll be discussing that more on the November 2nd workshop.
We'll move on to the next item of business, I guess, is ordinance D 21-85.
I'll load it up.
So Jason.
You mentioned that before you got here.
Yeah, we were
I'll
talking
tell
about
you,
that earlier. We were
in
like,
a
I
good
hope
way,
he's here tonight.
Bad way. In a good way. I respect it. This is a lot of work, right? And
Yeah.
it's like probably some of the most important work besides the police department that gets done.
It has a lot of effect on a lot of people. So we did have this on for the last committee meeting, but we wanted to make sure everybody was here, so we did forward it tonight. So this is ordinance D 2185, and it's the zoning map ordinances. I'm going to go over a high level of each of the changes. The staff report has a lot of deep details in it that I will leave there, and if you have any questions, I can answer those. So just in general, there are two maps that we really use to regulate land use in the city. The first is in the comprehensive plan, and we adopt what we call a future land use map. And the future land use map identifies what land uses should be and the zonings that are consistent with those land uses. So in order to, then once you do that, the state law requires that your zoning map, which is the one that everybody gets focused on, is consistent and implements that future land use map. So all of the changes we're talking about tonight are changes that need to be made in order so that we are consistent with that future land use map that was previously adopted. So that there's no changes there. We're just changing the zoning map to be consistent with that previous decision. So because we are dealing with zoning, we did a little bit more public outreach than we would do on a typical ordinance. The posting notices, email notification list is what we do for all ordinances. We have a email list of everybody who's ever said they want to know about planning in the city, and every time we issue a notice, they get an email saying this is what's going on. And I tell people if they don't want to listen to it, they can delete it, but they know at least what's going on. We also did mail out a letter to every property owner whose zoning classification was going to change, directly to them. We mailed out 173 letters and received comments from 9 individuals. That's kind of how we did, at least let property owners know what we were proposing and why we were.
Hopefully they're happy then.
I don't want to read too much in it. They did not feel significantly motivated enough to reach out to provide comments for the other 160-ish people. So this is that future land use map that I was talking about. This is adopted in our comprehensive plan. And as you can see, it very closely mimics the zoning map, but there are differences, which is what we're making the changes today to. So the first one is over at the Swiss Park. Currently, that property, even though it's split zoned actually, with the area that's in the dark solid green is currently zoned Midtown Core. We're changing it. The zoning map would change it to public facility, which is the same zoning that's on the rest of the property. It does support the historical park use as a permitted use instead of a legal non-conforming use. And that which is what was the biggest concern of the property owners, to be able to continue to use that property for park uses. And in Midtown Core, they can, but it's always a legal non-conforming use versus just an outright permitted use. We did receive a comment letter from the Swiss Park president. That letter is in here along with all of our comments. They generally agreed that PF is a better land use designation. They were specifically concerned about some specific uses. I did the research and was able to demonstrate to them that the uses that they were concerned with are actually outright permitted under the public facilities designation. And therefore, the uses would be permitted and they would be able to continue to operate the park as they have historically done, but not if it remained in the Midtown Core. So I can answer any questions if there is any about this one.
What you were discussing, I tried to follow it too, and I couldn't on the tax applications.
That's on Skyline. We'll get to that one. That's what the last one.
And that's only
Yeah, that's only on the Skyline.
the 5.
The
RC5?
RC5.
RC5.
Yeah. This tax exemption, their taxes is based on who the property owner is, and I believe they're a nonprofit, so however that gets worked out with the county. There wouldn't be, I don't believe there would be any tax implications because we're not changing the use of the facility or of the ownership.
Thank you.
So this is map upsert 2. This is over kind of that area of Easttown where we kind of explained when we were doing the Easttown zoning amendments. This was the part of Easttown that was pulled out of Easttown and moved into the Midtown Core Center, the Midtown Center. We are changing there's 3 zoning changes that are happening. The majority of it is going from Easttown to C2. There's a small part that's going from Easttown to R3. And then a small part that's going from Easttown to public facility, it's a detention pond. The ones that are going to C2, the permitted uses in the old Easttown zoning and C2 were pretty much identical, which is why we identified this as a good transitional zone. And in the Easttown, it adopted R3 as the density. C2 adopts R3 as the density. So there's a lot of mirroring there. And so this basically allows for the uses that are out there to continue. It was already subject to the Midtown development standards when we changed the boundaries of Midtown, so that doesn't change. The density doesn't change, and all the uses that are out there are allowed to continue to be there as they are. We did receive two comment letters. One was about a vacant property where they're proposing to do a small, I think, 8 apartment complex, maybe 6. That would still be allowed in the C2. It would not be allowed if it stayed Easttown. And the density between the C2 and the old Easttown zoning classification were identical. All the other development standards would be the same.
That's what I was interested about in the letter. Is that he was trying to get an 8-unit apartment complex, but it wasn't permitted.
No, he wanted to make sure that when we went to C2, that it would still be a permitted use.
Gonna be able to build the apartments anyway because he had like
under the old East. So this was kind of a step process.
Right.
We had Easttown, and then a couple months ago we amended Easttown and we removed the residential uses. Before that happened, he was going to be able to do it. Once we removed the residential uses from Easttown, he wouldn't have. Following the zoning classification, he would be able to continue on. The other one was the mobile home park. They were concerned that this would change their ability to continue to operate and that they were going to a commercial zone. They were already they were actually in a light industrial zone. When we did the Easttown zoning amendment ordinance a couple months ago, we moved mobile home parks to C2 as a permitted use with the same qualifier, which is they had to have been in existence at the time that the property was annexed into the city. So that zoning amendment didn't change the landscape of the C2 because the only two that were in existence at the time of annexation were these. So it was a kind of a, it was just to make sure that when we made that zoning change, they were allowed to continue to operate as they have been for the last 20 years.
So if a mobile home burns,
They can put another one in there, or if they have one that gets old, they need to replace it, they can replace it. Yep, tornado comes through. I grew up in Oklahoma.
I was there last week.
Trailer park,
Tornado.
mobile home parks, for some reason, the tornado would miss all of downtown and go straight to where the mobile home parks were. Why, we never figured out that.
But they can't expand it though, right?
They can't expand it beyond its current footprint or density, so it has to stay, and they're pretty much maxed out. I don't think they can add any more units in there. We haven't really had any problems that I'm aware of with them or with the operation of the facility. So we just wanted to make sure that how they've been operating in the past would stay the same when we change the zoning classification. And then the other one is the East Point neighborhood. They're going to an R3, which is a high density residential development. They're actually, I think, 20-some units per acre in East Point, so it meets the right thing. And they're townhouse developments, which are allowed in the R3. And we didn't receive any comments from.
They were like an R2?
No, they were Easttown. Yeah.
Okay.
And so when we made the change to make Easttown not have residential uses, that neighborhood would have a real hard problem with insurance and everything. So making it the R3, the setbacks, and the R3, the Easttown density and the R3 density are identical, so there was no change. And we didn't receive any comment letters from people in the East Point neighborhood. Map Excerpt 3 is a mistaking in the zoning map. We don't know how this happened, but there's 4 parcels out by Inlet Island Park that were zoned public facility. 3 of them, I think, or 2 of them have homes actually built on them, which means they were all non-conforming uses because single-family residents were not allowed in the public facility zone. The other 2 are vacant, and people have been trying to sell them so people can buy them to build homes. And every time they call us, we say they can't because it's not a permitted use in the public facility zone. So this changes that and corrects that error in the zoning map. We did receive 1 letter of support, and it was one of the real estate agents asking us when we get this done so that they can move forward with the project. So that's just kind of cleaning up the zoning map from an inconsistency.
Now change the taxes that we get from that thing?
I don't think it would change the taxes because it's already been taxed as a single family home. But it would allow for the 2 vacant properties to be developed. We routinely have gotten calls in the past about this, and we keep telling them, well, it's the comp plan designation is low density residential, but the zoning is public facility, so you'd have to go through that process as an individual to get it corrected. However, since we were doing these 21 amendments, we wanted to go ahead and make this change for these property owners. Any concerns, questions on this one?
No, this one was hard for me to understand, so I'm glad you made it sound easy. I was actually really confused.
It was a boo-boo. It was a boo-boo. This is the bottom line. When we drew the zoning map, we made a mistake. And this is correcting the mistake. The properties in green that you still see on here, they are part of Inlet Island Park and correctly zoned public facility. It's just when we drew the map and put the polygon in there, they went too far south and too far east and picked up these 4 residential properties. So it was an error in our zoning map. And this is the way we have to fix those errors.
So the dark up there, the dark green is the park, and the light green are
No, the dark green, if I can use my cursor, the dark green right here, that's Lake Taps.
Mhm.
These right here are Inlet Island Park.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yep.
That's the dark green
And these solid yellow right here
or the six.
are the fixed. They are currently zoned public facility, just like these over here. And we're zoning them R1, just like the surrounding neighborhood. the correct, and the future land use map shows them as low density resident. So it corrects the inconsistency and our error at the same time.
Am I driving you too nuts,
Oops.
Tom and Ben?
No, like you said, it's very important
Yeah.
that we get it. So, the planning commission's went through it very well.
It's amazing those things happen though,
Always important.
yeah.
So really hard to undo.
Right, that's what I'm thinking about. Gosh, Polygon, the wrong lines cause all these problems.
Yeah, and literally it's just drawing that line, and it's one of those things where people are like, well, can't you just do it? I'm like, no, because the council adopts the map. I don't have the authority. I mean, if you want, council wants to say whatever Jason says on the zoning, I'm sure. So this is just another cleanup. This is one of the other private HOA parks on the lake. It's currently split zoned, as you can see from the parcel to the south. The parcel to the south is zoned public facility. The solid green parcel where it says change to public facility is currently zoned R1. R1 has some setback challenges for some park uses, which is why it was designated in the comp plan to be public facility, and we've also fixing the zoning map here. And we didn't receive any comments, and we did mail a letter to the HOA on this one. So I think this is.
Is there a tax implication going?
Public facility, probably not in that case again, because it's
An HOA.
It's an HOA piece of property that's been reserved as a park. So the same analysis that we did for Sky Island, which is the plat says it's parkland, that's what's going to drive more of the tax implication than the zoning map is going to, because we're not going to change that fundamental use of the property as park. It's more of when they apply for permits and setbacks and stuff like that. We had some problems. We had to work with them really carefully on some work they were wanting to do because of the split zoning of the property. This just allows it to be recognized as the park that it did. So here we get, I think, where we get into the more ones that affect a greater group of people. So these are the 4 lots that we refer to, the properties that we refer to that are there in the pothole. So this is the closed depression out around the edge of the city, out off of 68th. You have to come off of Myers Road. This was the one a couple years ago, the area a couple years ago where we were on the news because it flooded and people were using rowboats to get across. Right now, there's only one house back there in this area. All the other properties are vacant, but they would be in the same situation. And so we did, when we did our watershed protection plan, we did look at what the engineering fix would be to deal with that flooding, kind of on an engineering basis, and it's about a $3.5 million project. The reason is because it's a closed pothole without a natural outfall. We would have to install a pump station down here on this parcel right here that I'm kind of circling, this bottom one, and then pump water all the way back to Lake Tapps, which is what we did a couple years ago. I think we spent a pretty penny pumping water out of the pothole to protect people's homes. So this is the other side of that strategy, is people can still build homes, they just can't build it at that R1 density of 4 to 5 units per net acre. They're going to build it more at 1 unit per 5 acres. So they can still build a home on the property, lower density, lower risk. We did mail notices to all the property owners, and we didn't receive any comments.
How do you sell a letter on this?
It's the next one. So that's, if we left it as R1, then we want to keep the project in the watershed protection plan for the engineering. This kind of allows us to slide that project off the table list by simply changing the zone.
Such a rare coincidence to have it happen. We keep us to do what we did last time, don't you think, John, or not? How we drained it last time?
Oh, yeah, I mean, pumps and
I
staff
remember.
there
Yeah.
24/7.
That was right before I started here.
All I know is I remember sitting in this room being interviewed by the council and the TVs all at the same time because people were showing themselves rowing to home on their rowboats.
So that today, not that far, but I was down there today in that area.
And this property is zoned in the future land use map. It also is shown to go to this conservation zone because of the floodplain issues that exist in it. So since 2015, we've always had this on the list of areas that should be at this RC5. And as we move, I'm just going to say this as we move into the next one, when we're looking at these areas and putting them in this RC5 category, it's one of the big drivers is wanting to make sure that the zoning classification is reflecting the environmental conditions on the property. Because even if you leave it, you can zone it whatever you want, those environmental conditions are going to still drive the development. And so there's lots of people who get disappointed when they call us and they want to go, well, I have 5 acres, I'm going to do this. And we're like, well, you can't. And here's all the reasons. So this just sets up an easier expectation between the city, the property owner, and the environmental. So this is the big one. It's along Angeline Road. The EIS that we did years ago determined that the property really wasn't suitable for R1 density. And that has to do a lot with, and that's the map from the figure in 1996 that shows the area all zoned in kind of this conservancy zoning. And what that really has to do with is the amount of critical areas in the property. So you've got Fiddle Creek, you've got a floodplain, you've got wetlands with buffers, and you've got landslide hazard areas. And I don't even have the wetland buffers up here. I just kind of showed you blobbily where the wetlands are. So what that means is anybody who's trying to access the property from Angeline is going to have to try to get Army Corps of Engineer permits. I mean, the cost of just trying to get access to the back half of those properties is astronomical because of the environmental critical areas and the fact that you've got a stream, a highly regulated stream right down the middle of it. And from the backside, there's not a lot of access because of the landslide hazard area, which is why when we did the comprehensive plan, the EIS in 1996, it was identified as areas that should not be zoned in that kind of R1 density. They still can develop. The way density works in the RC5 is it's 1 unit for every 5 acres, and you can cluster those homes. So if you have 40 acres, you can still find an area, that works and build homes on them. So it doesn't mean you just get one home. It's one home for every 5 acres. And it actually makes sure that this one I think may have some positive tax implications to the property owners because I'm not a tax expert, but my understanding is when they're doing tax assessments, they're looking at the zoning for vacant property and what it could be developed as, and not always taking into some of the critical areas. So this kind of makes a better reflection between what can actually be built on the property, given not just the zoning scheme, but also the critical area regulations. We had planned to do this long ago, but for a lot of reasons, we waited to now to move forward with this one. We did receive 3 comment letters. One basically was just, I oppose it. We need land for housing. As I've explained, we really can't put housing here. There's not a really good way to put sewer lines and streets and the infrastructure you need to support housing. The other one really, let me kind of go to the back, is down here on this really last end property. And it's either this one or the next one up. And what she wanted to do was to split it in half and build a house for herself and her mother or her family. And under the RC5, she wouldn't be able to split it in half. She still would be able to build a house and a 1,200 square foot ADU, which is about the size of home she was wanting to build. If it was still R1, being able to split it into 2 lots probably still wouldn't be financially feasible because they would have to bring in the sewer lines, they'd have to bring in the roads, they would have to basically short plat the property, dedicate the right of way, and she may actually have to do more than 2 lots because we have minimum lot density requirements in the R1. Under the RC5, she should still build the house, the ADU. Houses and ADUs can be on septic, so she would be able to more realize her goal of a house and a second house under the RC5 than subdividing the property into. There are some, they would have to sell them together. They wouldn't be able to sell them separately, but it was really, that was kind of her dream for the property, and I think that she could still do that. We don't have permits. This was just kind of her dream that she's talked about. And I talked with her on I talked with her on the phone a really long time. We left, I think she understood, and I kind of walked her through the pros and cons of both approaches. If it was me personally, I probably would do the house in the ADU because the way our ADU code is structured, it's cheaper to build a house in an ADU than it is to build two houses.
And then you're that far south, it's all private road.
Yeah, so, and this is on the 192nd corridor. So if she were to subdivide, she would have to dedicate the road for 192nd, improve her portion of the 192nd corridor, which is a huge cost, drag the sewer line down. There's already water in the area. With an ADU, they would be able to be on water, but they could stay on septic because of the distance. And then the fees are cheaper for the ADU for a single family home. And 1,200 square feet is about what she was talking about for the home. She may want it bigger, but 1,200 square feet is not and it doesn't count the garage. So it's 1,200 square feet of living space.
So I was going to ask you what her perspective was. You thought her perspective.
I think she has concerns about it, and I think some of her other concerns were concerns unaddressed by the zoning change either way. So one of her concerns in talking with her on the phone was that, why would she put $1 million house in there when all the other properties around there are crap, which doesn't change with the zoning change one way or the other. She was concerned about not being able to sell them separately. You can only do that through the short plat, but as I said, I don't think a short plat would pencil out. It might be on paper possible, and I think it would be a high cost project to do. But if I looked at her ultimate wish, which was I want to build a house for myself and I want to build a small house for my in-laws, it's still doable, and it's still doable in a cheaper way than short platting it into two lots and having to do all the road and infrastructure costs. Like I said, we're going to make everybody happy all the time, but there's still a path forward, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that is consistent with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the way we should be zoning properties, so that the zone reflects the actual environmental conditions on the property. I don't approach this lightly. This is why we did so much research, and the narrative on this section is very thick. We went back all the way back to our 1996 EIS when we were setting up the city to see where we should be putting urban densities, and this jumped off the page as an area we should be putting urban densities. And the zoning map was never done to change to reflect that.
About the land grab. But that was
I don't understand what land grab we would be getting because it's still all in private property ownership hands and still can be developed. We're not taking any of it. The big outcome of this is we're changing the density. If the same uses are in RC5 and RC1 are pretty identical, at least when it comes to housing, the single family zone housing. The big change is that density. And this is how we've approached these types of situations on lots in the past. So if you look at the hill coming up to the city, that's all RC5, where we had these really high value, significant critical areas where we still want to allow for some development, but not at the same densities we would allow in other areas. This is a zoning classification. So really it's a question of density. So they can still build homes. You can still build a home, 1 unit for every 5 acres. You can even cluster them so the lots don't have to be 5 acres. You can have smaller lots so you're kind of clustered over in this area and this area remains undeveloped. So it's really a matter of the density, not the use. I mean, it's still available for single family uses. As I said, there's probably some positive tax implications because they can go to the county now and say, I can't be built out at an urban density. I'm more of a rural density. And I've got all these critical areas on my property. I'm in a conservancy zoning. So there's, as I said, I'm not a tax expert, but that's the conversation I would be having with the county.
Just a heads up, we still got 4 action items here.
So this is the last one. Sorry. and Sky Island Division 6, this is an area that's already a critical area tract. It's proposed to be zoned to RC5, which is how we've zoned all of the steep slope. And it is also consistent with the future land use map. We did get 2 comment letters They were worried about it increasing their taxes. I kind of walked them through how that doesn't change because the tract is still saying it's an open space tract, which is what their zoning was based, their tax was based on. Ultimately, we got a letter from the HOA in support of the zoning reclassification. The other person making the comment is on the planning commission and voted in favor of the zoning amendment. So if you look in there, there's two people that made comments. One's the HOA, one's a citizen.
Yeah.
The citizen is a planning commissioner. And so when it came forward to the planning commission, Bill Fred,
Oh, right, yeah.
William Frederick. So he when it came through on the hearing after we talked with him, he actually voted in favor of it. So, well, I don't have a letter in here saying he is in favor. I assume since he voted for it, his concerns were addressed. So that's all I have. I can answer any questions on this.
Good job. A lot of detail.
Okay, so we have this on upcoming work.
Yeah, it's on November 2nd. I was going to see if everybody was okay with me bumping it to the November 2nd night, the second Tuesday, the second workshop in November, not the first one, only because selfishly my son is getting inducted into National Honor Society.
Oh,
And I just found out that it's on November 2nd. So I'm hoping we could kick it down the road 2 weeks so I can go to that.
Yep.
Good.
Job.
Okay.
If you have any questions as you read it, please reach out to me.
Tried. I don't know how you read that stuff, man. Like.
Yeah.
That's
That's why we call it the dark arts.
No, it's going to go to workshop
on
the second,
16?
the 16th.
So next item of business, ordinance for hearing examiner code amendments.
This one I'll be real quick. Our hearing examiner, after 20 some years, is retiring. We have to get a new hearing examiner. I was looking at the hearing examiner code and realized that we needed to make some changes since the hearing examiner process has evolved over the last 20 years since we kind of established the system. And so these amendments would clear up our hearing examiner code, and then we'd be issuing an RFP hopefully in the next couple of weeks for a new hearing. And there's not really a bunch of
a few of them I would've thrown.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was any controversial ones in my mind. If there's any questions, I can answer those.
But one of the changes that was suggested was about making the hearings by their own staff or something like that.
Yeah, which they already do. So when we have a hearing, Cusseau already brings his own recording secretary that takes notes for him.
Okay.
So we're just kind of fixing this up to mimic what we have going on. They're always going to bring their own recorder that's going to take their notes for them if they need to. And that way there's a clear expectation that that's going to be in the RFP on them.
Okay.
The other big changes we're mandating, instead of being optional, that the hearing examiner have a license to practice law in the state of Washington. The way it's currently written is a planner with 5 years of experience could be the hearing examiner.
Wow.
Given the changes that have happened in growth management over the last 20 years, I just didn't, as a planner with 15 years, I didn't feel that would be appropriate. And having a lawyer would be the best way to go because these are legal decisions they're making, quasi-judicial decisions.
So is current hearing examiner?
Yes. And he's retiring after, I think 40 years, Cusseau's in his 70s. And I think he's just decided to hang up the...
Already? 27.
That's good to me.
I talked to, no kidding, a 75-year-old HR manager.
Oh, wow, God.
Oh, man, you talk about knowing where all the bodies are.
Yeah. Things have changed a little in that department. So this is good to go to the next. Take it, right?
I would agree.
Kelly,
Yeah, I'm
is
good
that
with
good? Okay. Got that, Debbie? Okay.
26.
Yes.
Okay. Next item is, of course, pavement management services contract.
Yes. So this is the, sorry, this is the professional services agreement with IMS. That's Infrastructure Management Services, and this is going to be the PSA to kick off our pavement management program that we've been working on developing. The scope includes performing pavement condition assessments on the entire street inventory. That's 73 centerline miles, and then loading that information into our pavement management software Paver. We received 3 proposals to complete the effort. IMS was chosen based on the accuracy of the pavement assessments. They provide full paver support. They'll load all the PCI information and our street history into the paver software, and also once we have it loaded, they'll help us, kick off the program running paver. And the other 2 consultants, they do not provide the full paver support. The required expenditure was $36,970 to initiate the pavement management program with IMS. We had initially budgeted $15,000 for this effort, so we currently have a negative balance of $21,970. My understanding is that there was a budget amendment or planned or already in the process. I don't have the current update on that. The staff recommendation is to approve the agreement, and I'll open up for anybody has any questions.
I thought we already did this another way. In the past, we went to the city and looked through the streets and took notes on your programs. How did we do before? It's something we did.
A formal scoring of the pavement condition hasn't been completed in years. Now, staff has gone out and reviewed sections of the pavement and made recommendations for certain projects or different things like that, but a formal scoring has not been completed in quite some time.
Is this something that, because we're going to wait till the next biennium and we can get the budget amount right?
This was budgeted for $15,000 in your initial budget for 21-22. And as Andrew indicated, I have already put this $22,000 that will come forward in your November budget amendment. The money's there to do it. We just need to put it forward in the budget amendment.
Is that all come out of what, the general fund, or is it
That's-
streets?
yeah.
Or?
It's in the 301.
No, it's street.
Okay.
I'm fine.
So are we good, is this, what, a biannual thing, assessment, or is it,
Actually, I would lean on Jack a little bit as far as the actual program is concerned.
Sure.
It certainly it should be done at some frequency so that we're
Okay.
keeping that updated.
key factor?
Jack?
I could speak to that if you like. Yeah, right now we're trying to push that forward because it's actually going to be a one-time service where we're going to capture all of the history data that we've had for the last 10 years, put it into Paver, and it's going to run our actual PCI rating. And the importance for us right now is that the individual that's doing that work is Steve Wallitson, and he's looking to leave pretty soon here, real quick, and we're going to rely on him. But also what this does for us is that when we go after grants, they actually require us to have PCI ratings, and there's been a lot of grants we haven't been able to go for because we haven't had this information. So right now, if we can actually get this going and push through, we can then start next year looking forward to going after some grants. And so what's going to happen is once we work with this outfit, IMS, they'll actually come out later this year and the beginning of next year and actually start doing the work. This is one that's actually worked on with a lot of cities in the area. They're out of Arizona. They do a really good job. And in comparison, it's actually hard for us to get a company to do this. The other ones are actually out of New Jersey. So this is something that everyone in the area is doing, and we want to be one of them also.
So I get the money back to the grants, I bet, in the long run. Yeah.
I'm hoping so.
You have to have an assessment to work with. So is it like yearly, what are we looking at kind of thing? I'm thinking to make sure you guys get this in the budget, right? For whatever frequency you need it to be in there.
A good frequency with this would be 3 to 5 years. I think right now, if we can get it right now to figure out what condition our roads are in, it's going to last us a few years. But yeah, definitely 3 to 5 years would be a good number that we should shoot for.
So, you guys make sure to work with Sherry on how you want to program it in, whether you want it in or
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've been here 7 years, and it's never been in the budget, so.
Yeah. However you guys do that magic, just make sure you keep continuing on in the program. It provides value for you. Otherwise, you lose the data consistency and then you're closed again.
Right.
Yep.
Good.
Get cheaper if you keep it up to date?
I don't know that there's actually, if we're going to ask them to do this same scope of work each time, I would imagine that the expense would be the same. So I don't know that we'd necessarily get any sort of a economy of scale by doing this the next time around, because they'll actually reevaluate all the roads again.
I think as part of this, and I could jump in on that, we're actually going to watch how they do that and how they run the numbers, because, yeah, we'll definitely evaluate to see if it's something maybe that we can do ourselves. At that time, we can kind of get a cost and see what kind of work that would take to do. But certainly that's a great thought. We certainly would be looking at that too.
Okay, so we'll move forward to the next available council meeting on the consent agenda. And then we'll move along to discussion items, sidewalk extension project.
Yes.
2 minutes to spare.
I approve.
Which
I knew
one?
you would.
Good work.
I believe, Drew, is that you?
Drew?
Is
Yes.
that you?
Okay. I know we're running low on time.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a continuation of the sidewalk extension discussion that we had at the October 5th CDC. As requested, we completed the probable construction cost estimate for Veterans Memorial Drive between Locust and Angeline. The estimate come to $1,130,621. We also created a preliminary priority order for the 12 sidewalk locations, and we based the priority on the priority that was already established in the mobility element, and then by a level of service, whether it was exceeded the standard, met the standard, or below current standard, and then by cost. And then see, the Veterans Memorial Drive extension came in at priority number 5 based on that initial criteria. So we wanted to open these projects up for further discussion, and then hopefully come to a finalized priority order that we can use to go to design with this year.
I will say the mayor is supportive of the Veterans Memorial Project. It's a very visible, high-profile project, and kind of putting all of our eggs in one basket.
Okay.
The mayor is supportive of that project. I'll leave it at that.
So how many injuries are on that road? How many? That's like,
On Veterans Memorial?
yeah, that thing scares me to run on that road, and I'm like,
Yeah, we would have to work with PD to get that information. I don't think that's anything. Jack, do you have any of that information right now?
Right now, we don't have the actual accident history out there. But for the sake of time, maybe I could help out a little bit with this. For our thought process on this, anytime you have a project that's over $500,000, generally you want to put it on the 6-year tip so you can get an actual grant for that, or make a developer that's adjacent to the property help pay for that. Growth should pay for growth, and that's something that Dan brought up earlier, which is absolutely correct. I would almost imagine with this list that we'd want to have the higher paying projects put on the 6-year tip. The other ones we could actually start getting going on. We actually have enough money to start doing survey for the work and then actually pushing it forward. So that's 3, 4, and 5 would be a 6-year tip, and then maybe even including the first one of Angeline Road, and then the other ones we can survey. But that way we could actually blanket a lot of the city, address a lot of the concerns. That would be a suggestion that I would look at, but certainly up to you how you'd like to move forward with that.
I'm sorry, Tom, just to add to that really quick, this run of sidewalk is currently included in a project on the tip, which is the Angeline intersection.
Okay.
So it outlines this sidewalk being extended all the way back to Locust. To add to that, we do have transportation impact fee dollars that we're not using at 214th now that we could use on this intersection and pay for that project and go that route and still free up this sidewalk money to use in other locations. So another dynamic here to consider, you know.
Well, I said he'd pay for the concrete for it's worth, but you know, when it actually happened.
Public-private partnership.
Yeah. There's another ring.
He wants
Good luck
to,
with
he
that.
wants to put in real bad. He goes, I'll pay the concrete, you, Tom.
Yeah. So we have a plan in place. If you would like to input, we would love to hear it.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate all the work, Andrew. I think you guys did a great job in line. Projects done in multiple areas than a single big project, even though carry the way.
Well, it's got to get it done sometime. The longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. And like I said, there are grants available for us for that. So it might save some money in the long run now. And like it's visible to the people of what we're doing in the city and sidewalks and stuff. And I like the rest of the projects we found out last time. They're great.
Yeah.
Where's the areas to go to, but this has got to get them sometime.
Uh-huh. What does that mean?
Well, I'd rather see that done first.
What's that? The Angeline?
The Angeline, that's like Neil says, it's the most visible.
Sure.
Given the time, you want this discussion next season?
Oh, can we do that?
Yeah.
Oh, can we do that?
Sure, yeah.
Do you guys want to continue this discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I took this all.
Very good. So we'll continue the discussion, Andrew. Thanks for all the work there.
Okay.
We gotta run downstairs.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Get done.
Yep.
And corrections, Debbie has the corrections.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good job, everybody.
Meeting adjourned.